Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. Additional support comes from Wyndham Garden Lafayette.
From Cafe Vermilionville in Lafayette, we're out to lunch with Professor of Finance and Director of the award-winning Birkenroad Reports, Peter Raschuti. It's business, Acadiana style.
Hi, I'm Peter Raschuti. Welcome to Out to Lunch. Sometime over the past few years, the meaning of the word business has changed. Business used to be something that men in suits conducted in offices and on golf courses. Today, some of the most successful men in business don't own a suit, and business is no longer a boys-only club. Shows like Shark Tank make business look like a game anybody can play if you're prepared to roll the dice and partner for life with someone you just met 12 minutes ago. And then there's the ubiquitous app. You can apparently dream one of those up on a Friday, and by Monday, you'll be making millions in the App Store. Now, some of those stories are true, but for most of us, we have more modest dreams. We'd like to be our own boss and have our own business. We'd like to be able to pay the bills and save a little. And if we could accomplish that, we'd be very happy. But the main obstacle to achieving even these modest dreams is simply a lack of business know-how. We might be born with a talent to make, build, or perform, but most of us are not born with business skills. In some places, you'd have to go to a business school to acquire those skills. But here in Acadiana, help is closer at hand. Heidi Melancon is Executive Director of the Louisiana Small Business Development Center. The LSBDC, as most people refer to it, helps start and grow small businesses out of its offices at UL. They've been around since 1983, and Heidi has been running the show over there since 2014. Heidi, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
2014 was also the year Anne Falgout became Executive Director of the Vermilion Economic Development Alliance. The alliance is based in Abbeville, and they help start and grow businesses throughout Vermilion Parish. Anne, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thanks.
Now, Heidi and Anne, both of you have jobs that must be a lot of fun when times are good. When there's a buoyant economy, people like to take chances. They'll start a business they've always wanted or dreamed about, or they'll borrow money to expand a business they've got. But right now, that is not what's happening. Many people who can no longer find work in the oil field or related businesses are being forced to figure out how to work for themselves. Sometimes it might be as simple as driving for Uber. Other times it could be a bit more complex. Some businesses are probably turning to you to help them simply keep the doors open and the lights on till things pick up. So let's start with the big picture. From your individual perspectives in Lafayette and Abbeville, what are you seeing in the current state of this changing business climate? I'll ask you, Heidi, first.
Well, I'll just say, talking about oil and gas, I think it was around the end of 2014, and they started coming in droves. And it was anything from leadership development, or it could have been someone operating an oil field service company. And it was starting to go, the bottom was coming. And so they were looking for strategies, something to diversify them away from what they were doing. Some were losing jobs, and they were looking to maybe start cutting grass or what have you. So I've seen it drop off, and not so much that they're in that panic mode anymore.
So it's kind of plateaued?
It's kind of plateaued. I think we're at a cautious state right now. We're waiting for things to turn around. But I think people have settled into what they consider the normal right now.
What are you seeing, Anne?
Well, I mean, I think Heidi's right. The panic mode is over. The companies that have survived are the ones that have successfully diversified. They're the ones that figured it out on the front end and started preparing. You know, I have companies that do primarily oil and gas, construction, and they figured out how to transport rice to ports in New Orleans and get that overseas. So they're really trying to figure out how to use the actual assets that they have, whether it's barges, equipment, or talent, to do something a little bit different. You know, industrial operators become industrial cleaners now.
Right.
Because maintenance is still a big force in the oil and gas
industry.
These
are smart folks, because the
oil
field is right.
Yeah, you may be a geologist, and you could maybe start helping in the salt mining industry.
Absolutely.
And trying to pinpoint where they might drill the next salt mine. So there's diversification and lots of creativity that have been at the forefront going forward.
We joke about Cajun ingenuity all the time.
What did it, on both of you, in terms of this the model. Do they pay you for the services, or how does that work?
No. So the Small Business Development Center network has been around since 1983. In fact, Jimmy Carter signed them into legislation, where it brought together the federal government, universities, and private sector. Before there was such a thing called small business, or the sexy term. And so they started issuing grants around the country in 1983, and UL is part of a 8-center network across Louisiana. So we have networks across the country, and we offer our services at no cost. They're prepaid by your federal and state tax dollars.
And do you team up with those folks for ideas, places, people in other spots?
Absolutely. So anything we can do to harvest resources. If I have a client that's in Vermilion Parish, I encourage every client to go speak to as many people as you can. It's difficult to operate a business. And I think our job, because we have such a large outreach, is to triage and push out to all the resource partners so that we all work together in order to provide information and resources for people.
And Anne, what about your business model? Do you charge?
No, we don't. Kind of a similar situation. We're a political subdivision of the state. So we have a lot of public funding that comes from other parish and regional organizations to our facility. We also have gotten private in-kind donations, like built office space and things like that. So we pass along those no costs to our business community, and we're able to offer that free of charge because they are paying for our services through their tax dollars. So they actually can see their tax dollars at work, which is, something really exciting.
No
right, that's
no
right.
Cost,
Don't use that word
exactly.
free.
It's no cost.
You already paid for it. Exactly.
Now, Heidi, you get money from the federal government, and they have a printing press, which I always thought the state ought to be involved in. And but you've got state funding, and everybody, including NPR, thinks that's kind of scary. Yeah,
it's very scary. So, we are preparing our invoices right now, and, I walk in with my head down
Rub
and,
the pennies
and bring them my reports and try to be as detailed as possible when we're requesting funding. But everybody's been hit hard. On average, it's about 16% decline in sales tax dollars and property taxes. So our public entities are paid that way.
But isn't it funny?
So
you're getting cutbacks at a time where you really
when you
need
it,
this.
right?
Yeah.
You need to spend money to make money, right? So it's hard. So we're looking at other models, possibly some investor models.
Bake sales.
Bake sales, exactly.
That's not
I do cook, so
That's because you live here.
exactly. So we are looking at some other options, but it is scary, and we don't want our business community to miss out on services. So we're regrouping and trying to figure that out right now.
Now, Heidi, according to the information I got from our fabulous researcher, Ann Christian, over the past 12 months, your office has worked with 520 companies. That would be a huge number of clients in a private, consulting firm. How many people do you have on your staff, and what's the typical kind of interaction you might have with a client?
So, we do get that funding from the federal side, but they do expect something in return. So we're a metric-based organization.
Okay.
And we have a database that's immersed within our website that we can keep track of all of this data. So we can actually turn back to the government and say, this is what your return on your investment is. So when Anne called me, I was able to tell her we had 520 people that came. We have a staff of 4. And so it's our job to whittle down to the companies that we can do the most and productive work with. And so it may be that they're educated, maybe that they're passed off to another resource, but we look at that as the triage, and we probably do approximately 30 loan packages in a year, give or take, and we counsel on startup, regulatory compliance. It could be
what's the range
of a
size of a company?
Loan-wise, it could be from, I did one at $6 million down to $50,000. So package, we're helping them put together that business plan to take to the bank, to secure that capital. Or they could be using their own money, and they just want to do some cash flow management so they can see how far their money will go.
And as a plug for UL, I mean, we've had so many people on the show that came through there.
Yeah, we're based at UL. That's our host, and we have 7 other centers in the state.
That's our host too. That's where the radio
that's
station
right.
is. They
Most of my clients make their way to Heidi at some point or another too.
It's
we
either
try to
that
do
or
that.
Heidi's getting older in the system. I've been there since 05, so I've been.
Now, Anne, with the contracting of the economy, there's been a lot of belt tightening in all kinds of areas. In theory, this would not be a great time to cut back on economic development, obviously quite the opposite. But when you look at it, it's really a time to double down on providing business assistance, but that's not always the way agencies think. Have you had to make any accommodations to keep your own business in business?
No, we really have focused more on existing business retention. So, economic development is usually multifaceted, and it's usually broken down into three basic components: entrepreneurial development, existing business retention, and recruitment of new business. So that existing business base is by far the cheapest to maintain, keeping your existing companies up and running and successful. So we've actually just refocused and tightened up that way, where we still will assist any entrepreneur that comes through the door with an idea, absolutely. And any business that wants to move to Vermilion Parish, you can bet I'm going to be talking to them. But that group in the middle, we're spending more time out on the road, just dropping in on businesses, talking about how they're doing, and looking for opportunities that are free or no cost for them to actually improve their business.
Wow, and tell me about what it is. When you look at a new entrepreneur, some of them have better ideas than others. First of all, you're both very nice people. What do you do when you think it's kind of crazy? You have a nice...
Well, I'll just tell you, I feel my job is not to tell them that it's not.
Okay.
It's to show them.
Oh, show
them. So if it's in
Data.
the number, if it's in the
data,
if it's in the numbers,
thing,
it's in the numbers, I think they can make a more educated guess if this is going to work than to actually shoot it down. Because there's times I've counseled people and I thought they should not be doing this, and it got funded. So you never know.
You ever
really
wrong?
I've never, as I said, I never steer them. I may say, ooh, you're a young couple and you both want to quit your job. I don't think that's a great idea, but I think when you show them on paper, I think it's more compelling than to actually shoot the idea down at that point.
Heidi has this great class that I send a lot of my clients to called Starting and Financing a Small Business. It's like 3 very intense hours of tough love.
Yeah.
And here is everything you're going to need to think about. Payroll taxes and what are the, what's it like having an employee and actually thinking about things that you have never thought about before. And once we kind of expose that, you weed out the ones that weren't really into it in the first place, that maybe we're looking for a get-rich-quick scheme or looking to quit their job.
They usually never come back
they don't
because
come
of the
back.
homework you've given them to do.
Right.
They don't come back.
Because, this is not the easy way out.
No.
You're going to work
twice as hard.
Correct.
Twice as hard.
Correct.
And what is economic gardening?
Oh, okay. Well, Louisiana Economic Development had adopted that program about 8 years ago. It's the Edwin Lowe Foundation is the creator of that program, and it's for second stage entrepreneurs. And it's to help them diversify from the North American industrial classification system that they're in into other areas. So if you may make something for the oil industry that could maybe be used in another industrial type business in another state.
You don't just plant jobs.
And it's really gardening. I mean, you think of them as a little sapling, and you're kind of just nurturing them and using resources that are available at the state and inside the company.
Absolutely.
To really kind of improve their business model.
It's a very good metaphor.
It's a great program.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Peter Raschuti. I'm talking with Anne Falgout, Executive Director of the Vermilion Economic Development Alliance in Abbeville, and Heidi Melancon, Executive Director of the Louisiana Small Business Development Center in Lafayette. And Heidi, this is the part of the show we call Another Great Idea. Maybe you've got a friend like this, sometimes who always has got a great idea for you. They tell you about this job you should apply for, that guy you should have a cup of coffee with, or a great investment opportunity you should jump on. You can take advice like this and it turns out to be a disaster. You can dismiss this advice and miss out on something that has really turned out to be great, or you can take your friend's advice and it turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. Do you have an example in your life or career of a friend who had a great idea for you? Did you take their advice and how did it turn out? Let's start with Anne.
I feel like I have several people in my life who have been
Who have advice for you?
Tons of advice. I don't know what that says about me and my personality that people feel the need to give me advice all the time, but it does happen to me a lot, which I'm really thankful for.
And you have good advice people in your family. Didn't your grandfather start the omelet festival?
He did. He was a serial entrepreneur himself.
Yeah.
He joked to me one time, before I was in economic development, and he was very excited about that. But he joked to me one time. He said, I've started dozens of businesses in Abbeville, and he said some of them I even owned. And, he was a philanthropist and loved to loan money out and loved to help people live their dreams.
So did this one piece, did it come from a family member?
It did not. It came from, so I'm dating this brilliant man who
That's
is
a great thing to say on a show, by the way.
I know. He's going to be so embarrassed, but he's very humble, too. He's an artist and a musician and a music teacher and a sound recorder, and just his life is full of art. You know, he was sick a few years ago, stage 4 cancer. Will convince any banker to quit their job, and that's what he did. And he moved out of the kind of corporate world and decided to be an artist forever, and hasn't looked back at all. So actually, he's an entrepreneur too. He's opening a recording studio this month.
That's exciting.
Wow.
So Lucas gives me tons of great advice. Usually that, I'm very stubborn and don't take necessarily right immediately, and then I regret it. But one day I remember specifically, this was just a couple months ago, I was complaining and just kind of feeling sorry for myself, I guess. I'm surrounded by artists all day long, and I just wanted something a little bit more meaningful that for me, something. Yeah. And at one point, he just looked at me with the most aggravated look on his face, and he said, opportunities don't just come to you, right? You got to, create them. And I looked at him and was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I hear you complaining, but what are you doing about it? And so, in his infinite wisdom, once again, he told me how wrong I was about everything. And I told him about this cooking school in Lafayette that I'd been kind of watching on Facebook, seeing what they were doing. And he said, what you going to do? They're not coming to you. What you going to do? So I reached out to the owner and made a contact, and I've been teaching cooking lessons there on weekends ever since.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's my creative outlet, is food and cooking. And
is that where you do it at
that's
this place?
At this place. It's called Mix It Up. It's primarily for kids, but we do adult classes too. And it's just about educating kids on food and being more comfortable in the kitchen, and I love it. And it's my creative outlet.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't had the courage to do that and take that advice, I would not be doing that right now. And I'm crazy now. Now I have my full-time job and then my part-time job and then the mom job and all that.
It all mixed together.
It's fulfilling.
Glad you
it's
could fit us
fulfilling.
in.
Yeah.
Really,
You said free lunch.
Yes,
so,
it was. That sign that tracks people. Now, Heidi, what about yourself?
I think mine's a little bit more introspective. I think about how I wind up where I am, and I hail from the New Orleans area, and I had an uncle that nobody really went to Lafayette from that area. Typically, you stayed.
Right, New Orleans.
You really stayed in that area, and I decided to go. I was actually registered at LSU to go to college, and something made me stop and go look at Lafayette. And no one in my family had ever been to Lafayette.
LSU exit and kept going on 10.
Never been to Lafayette.
Typical
never
New
talked
Orleans.
about Lafayette. And my dad was German, so when I came here, Lindley was my maiden name, and nobody knew that name. But when I told him I was going to UL, he's like, "You will be back. You will not stay over there." And so when I think back to where I am and how I got here, it was a perseverance because it is a different culture, completely from that area. I was going home. I didn't know what Boudin was, and the accents were different. So I think about that and how I winded up a Melanson.
I was going to say, you
how
really
much more Cajun.
You couldn't get a more Cajun name.
No, not at all. So how I became a Cajun, that was my.
That would
I
be
think about it.
That would be a great name for a book.
Let's
exactly.
Becoming a Cajun.
I know there's somebody that can help you get started with your new business idea, Heidi. If you need some help.
Thank you. And that's another story how I winded up at SBDC.
Well, that's what's kind of weird about that question is that were you ever thinking of an idea, and yet you look at ideas all day long.
All the time. I realize it's a lot of work. And sometimes just listening to...
We scare ourselves out.
Really?
I'm discouraged from it the more people walk in my office. Not so much the ones that are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and thinking about the new start of it, but when you're in the trenches and you're really coming in and you're looking for advice. Because entrepreneurship it's an adult decision, and there's not a lot of people to turn to in your life. Many people can't turn to their spouses and tell them the bad news because they really don't want to hear that. So you do hear a lot of that, and you take a lot of that in and you feel like a social worker sometimes. But they
Well,
do
that would be
need an
another skill.
advocate. Yeah, they need
Psychiatrists,
advocacy. Yeah.
Well, like
Yeah.
you said in the intro, people are usually really great at doing something. They're really great at operating a piece of equipment or creating something new or doing a specific skill. But running a business is
Doing
a
it full time.
completely
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
skill set. And I usually tell people, if you don't already have that component, find someone who does to partner
Yeah.
with. And that usually is the most beautiful kind
Yeah.
of teams, the ones that are really balanced and nuanced in their own skills, not just
Yeah.
the same kind of thinkers working together on something. It's just having this really great balance, a great team around you.
And the lifestyle, like where are you in your life? Do
Absolutely.
you really want to work 80 hours a week when
Yeah.
you're approaching maybe your encore
Right.
part of life? You're going into your 50s. So you really have to look at where you are if you're in the middle of your career and you walk in. I've had that happen where they walk in, they have kids, they have private school, they have mortgages, and I'm
Right.
not happy.
Yeah.
I want to quit
You
my
wanna be
job.
less
You're like,
happy.
no,
As,
you can't
the-
do that. You can't do that.
You talked them off the
Right.
ledge. That's
correct.
When somebody walks in the door, like what is your, put it another way, what does your day look like day to day? Let's start with Heidi.
Oh, goodness.
I tell you, you walk in and it's 5 o'clock. You look up and there's no boundaries, because you're really fielding requests. It could be anybody walking in, telephone calls. We pretty much have 4 standing appointments a day as a consultant coming in, and then you've got to do the prep work. So beyond that, you get pulled. We get calls from macro organizations
Yeah.
that need help.
long
We're
have you
funded by, I think I have SBA, I have LED,
get all those
Louisiana.
to answer
Yeah.
too, yeah.
So when they ask for something, we respond to that.
And do you get people, maybe it's all these things, but do you get people in the idea stage or the group that's trying to pull it to the next level? Or
All across the board. It could be anything from a startup. And with as Anne said, I find we're going into an area where it's a little easier to work with someone who has skin in the game, because then you can help them leverage what they've already done and turn it into something a little bit more productive than what they're doing.
what one piece of advice, Anne, do you give to somebody who's thinking of starting a business?
Wow. Sleep on it.
Okay, don't jump right in this.
Yeah, I usually tell them to really kind of evaluate their network.
Yeah.
What do you have a fallback plan? Do you have a safety net? Do you have people who can help you? What's your finances look like? I really encourage them to slow down. Take your time and really figure out
And the
if this is the
tendency
right
is
move.
to do the other thing, is to just get ramped up.
Everybody
and-
wants to do this immediately. So I usually tell them to slow down, and then we start just kind of mapping out resources for them.
It's great you folks are
Yeah.
here. I mean, that's what you need at that
Right.
point.
You need
I'm a big fan of hybrid. I call it hybrid.
Yeah.
Keep your day job and do it on the
Oh,
side.
all right, to get started that way, yeah. And as
That's
much
great
as
advice.
you your spouse is great and your mom is
Sure.
great, they're pretty biased, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And, they-
Find-
Such a great cook.
Find
Yeah.
someone who's not a yes man.
Yes,
Exactly.
that's
Have lunch
right.
with them regularly and shoot them your ideas, and really kind of take time to evaluate how successful you can be. This is a good potential opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a. Do you ever talk to them about, even though they're getting going, what an exit strategy might look like?
Absolutely. That's one of the first things we do talk about, because you have to think of the inevitable and how would you actually resolve something if you got a loan on the line or you have a business partner. And that's one of the first things. And even in the starting and financing seminar, that's one of the things I bring up. And you can see the blank stares like, well, I'm just getting started. Why do I want to talk about an
Right,
exit
right.
strategy?
Yeah, we
But
talk about that with
yeah,
loan packages.
absolutely.
You need to make sure you have enough money for when you're not making
That's right.
money. And how do you
That's right.
pay off your creditors and lenders when maybe you don't earn anything and you have to
And it
transition? It happens all the time.
And I see this even in public companies where the founder, she might be great with ideas, but maybe not really particularly good at running a business.
Yep.
Right.
And that's kind of a tough thing to tell
Yeah.
somebody.
You wear all hats.
Yeah, and you try to compartmentalize this. We've seen it with public companies where, Fred, I can't tell you how good how great you've been at starting this business, but it might be
Correct.
time to, and of course you said right away, if you start with a partner or something that
Absolutely.
don't you have to do that other thing though, where the partners hate each other?
Yeah, that's not I usually will say, "Ooh, if you don't have to.
Say, oh, I think I hear my mother calling.
It's a little different
Yes,
when you're married to the partner.
oh yeah, I wasn't thinking about
happens.
that. And who's got to go? Bill. Bill's got to go. Is either of you ever been tempted to go to work for a client? Like the idea is so good, and
I have to tell you, when I started doing this in '05, before really entrepreneurship was sexy as it's coined today, but I love what I do. I love helping people, and sometimes I think it's a calling because I think about leaving or looking at other opportunities, but when somebody walks in and they need to write a business plan, it's like I come alive.
Some people
like,
get a
whoa,
calling
I love
to be a
it.
nun.
Yeah, I love
but
it.
you
Yeah,
thought economic
That's
development.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 15
Yeah.
years, and this is, maybe it's heredity pulling at me, and my grandfather just, steer me in that direction. But this is what I'm supposed to be doing,
And that's a good feeling, isn't it?
Right, and if I do something else, it'll be on my own. So it'll be my idea,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It'll probably involve a pot and pan at this rate.
Yes,
There's
probably a plate of food.
We often hear that small business is the backbone of the American economy. Although here in Acadiana, we have varying opinions exactly how American we are. For us, small business is more than the backbone of our economy. It's every major bone in our economic body. So Anne and Heidi, first of all, you're doing great work helping individuals and businesses who come through your doors. But because small business has such a huge effect on this local economy, you're actually providing an invaluable service for all of us. So thank you for everything you're doing. And thank you both for taking the time to join me today on Out to Lunch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My guests on Out to Lunch today have been Heidi Melancon, the Executive Director of the Louisiana Small Business Development Center in Lafayette, and Anne Falgout, Executive Director of the Vermilion Economic Development Alliance in Abbeville. You can find out more about Heidi's and Anne's organizations by following the links on our websites, krvs.org and itsacadiana.com. Today's show is recorded live over lunch at Cafe Vermilionville in Lafayette. Cafe V is open Monday through Friday for lunch and 6 nights a week for dinner with a courtyard that sets the scene for fine Louisiana cuisine. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Merle. Our researcher is Ann Christian. Our theme song, Encore Monsieur Nice Guy, is written by Mitch Foreman and performed by Mitch Foreman and Andre Michaud. Our Acadiana business consultants are Pete Prados from Innovate Acadiana, Zach Barker from The Opportunity Machine, and Dr. Blake Escaday. If you want to know what we look like, you can find photos from the show on our website and Facebook page. The photos were taken today by Gwen Aucoin. You can get the show as a podcast. You can listen to past shows. You can keep up with us on all kinds of social media by going to our websites. It's acadiana.com and krvs.org. Support for Out to Lunch Acadiana comes from Wyndham Garden Lafayette, located off Pinhook near Calise Saloon. Wyndham Garden Lafayette is pet-friendly with free parking, free Wi-Fi, and a free shuttle within 3 miles that includes the airport and downtown restaurants. Out to Lunch is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsacadiana.com and KRVS 88.7 FM. I'm Peter Raschuti. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you again next week around the table here at Cafe Vermilionville for more business, Acadiana style, on Out to Lunch.
Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys in offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. Additional support comes from Wyndham Garden Lafayette,